I'm just literally going through the site, finding ball joints, checking them.
Oh no! That would have been perfect.
So here we are under the W204. We're actually going to be using a lot of the front suspension from the 204, mostly because it has a really strong wheel bearing, has a really great brake setup. We can use the C63 setup. Coilovers are readily available for it. So we're going to try to use some of this, but as you can see here, it doesn't have a single pivot point on the front McPherson strut like the 190E does. It actually has this sort of multi-pivot point. So we've taken this off, we have it over there next to the other one. Now we're gonna go compare them and see what we can do. Now, one of the other nice things about this is this runs a steering rack in front of the subframe, just like we fabricated on the Golden Era project. So it's gonna allow us to connect our steering rack to these tie rod ends, which will tie right nicely into this knuckle, and will give us a lot of, basically, a lot of solutions for one challenge. So let's go look it up.
A critical component of a competitive race car is its suspension. As with any regulated racing series though, there are parts of the suspension you can change and parts you can't. In DTM, all bodywork was required to be identical to the road cars, severely limiting the physical space for excessive customization. This, along with McPherson struts as standard up front, meant engineers had to get creative from the factory to be competitive.
We've cut the spring perch out, and now we're cleaning up all of the spot welds and getting rid of the rest of the stuff here. Basically what we're doing is we're ditching the spring on the control arm. We're going to be running a true coil over here, so we got to get rid of this.
Since Mercedes engineers developed a multi-link rear design, it offered superior adjustability over the E30 M3, allowing the race teams significantly more combinations for camber, toe, and caster to eke out every possible ounce of grip on the track.
I was hoping the whole thing would come out, not just the ball joint. I'm hoping that we can find a ball joint that's pressed in that has the right taper to match the C63. All right, so right in front of me, I have the original W201 190E front strut. Now, there's a couple things I want to note on this. Obviously, very small brake. This is an old school sort of sealed bearing, really not the strongest thing out there, especially for track use. The other thing is this has a divorced spring and shock setup. So this is the McPherson strut, has a strut bearing up top, our pivot point right here, but doesn't have a spring on it. Whereas a coilover obviously is a much more compact design, as we're gonna try to move to. There was actually a steering stop on here, and then across here is where the steering box actuated. Now, because we've switched to a steering rack, we need to move that over to around here, so the front mounted steering rack can actually actuate the steering. So there's a bunch of changes we need to make here. And so we found it easier actually to go straight over to a 204 setup right here. So we have the C63 W204 knuckle here. And this is really nice. It has a bolt-in wheel bearing, which makes changing your wheel bearing so much easier, and it has a really stout wheel bearing. And actually we have an old coilover from the old race car here that I'm using for mocking purposes. Now you can see this is gonna bolt to that, which is a really nice, clean setup. And one of the concerns is because this has the dual, control arm and a track rod, whereas this only has a single control arm with a single pivot point. We're concerned about the location. Stock 190 W201, small bearings, small brakes, kind of antiquated design, divorced spring, all that sort of stuff. And now we're gonna go over here, same setup, coilovers. We got big brakes, big wheel bearings, front steering rack, everything we need, and it's gonna mount right to the 190 right here. Let's go do it. Mercedes, doing the same thing on all their cars forever. We're definitely going to need to do something to this upper bearing. Not exactly sure what yet. For now, for mocking up, so I'm not holding nothing there, I'm just gonna pop this bearing off and just hold this strut up with that. All right, let's pop this control arm in.
With some modern Mercedes parts, the 190's suspension update began to fall into place. The W204's coilovers were a shockingly close fit, retaining the geometry and stroke required by the 190E. We can only imagine Mercedes' past engineers seeing their older design functioning so well with current parts. Including the C63 Knuckle only furthers that connection while providing the team a perfect fit with the new steering rack.
And we're coiled up almost all the way up on the coilover. So we do need to make sure we are clearing over here, which is nice. It's one nice thing about using like a whole assembly from a car. It's the wheels clearing the coilover, as you can see. And then obviously we need to connect a tie rod. Yeah, I think this is the solution. So, you know, we proved out that this will work. Now it's just a matter of doing the fine tuning details and making it work. That's like the upper echelon of ride height that we'll have, because that's almost raised all the way up. And it's pushing it out so the fender flare will get filled right up, which will be awesome. Suspension test fit. So we need to connect this to this. And the original Mercedes ball joint, which we have the cup of right here, is kind of a weird old unit with it. It has a shaft with a bolt that goes through in the side and locks in place, all that. And what we're trying to do is find a ball joint that will fit into the control arm, nice and snug like this one would, but then also has the same taper as the Mercedes W204 Knuckle. So here we are, I'm on the site. I'm gonna search the entire site and I'm just gonna type in ball joint. But what I'm doing is I'm just scrolling through these photos. I'm looking, so here's the Mercedes setup. These guys right here look pretty similar to that. So this might be something to earmark that might fit in there. These Porsche ones might work. Oh no, see these Porsche ones are kind of like the 190e ones, but they don't have a taper on them. They're just a shaft that has a pin go through the side of them. And obviously we can't do that. We need to have something with a taper. I did come across one from a Mercedes ML that looks like it might have an opportunity. So we're gonna go back in inventory and we're actually gonna pull it out of the shelf and look at it. So I'm gonna bring this control arm as something to check it against, because this is the correct control arm for here. Let's go check it out. What's up, man? So we got KE02C25 is our location. So KE02C25 right there. So we're gonna pull this out of the box. We're gonna take a quick peek at it and see if it's gonna work. Ooh, it's looking good so far. It's a nice big boy. So one of the things that made this one strike out to me is A, it's for an ML or a GL, so it's for a big car. So that means it's gonna be a big, strong ball joint. The other thing is it has this really cool mechanism where it actually screws in. So it actually is like a little coilover collar, so we can actually screw it in and tighten it down. And look at this taper, that looks pretty beefy. So kind of just holding it up to the other one. It looks like that might fit. The taper does look a little different. This taper looks greater, but there's only one way to find out. So we're gonna borrow this real quick. I'm just literally going through the site, finding ball joints, checking them.
Oh no! That would have been perfect.
Maybe we go machine this and make it work. This is a nice little like thread-in guy. Oh, that's nice. Put a little shim in there.
It's not a taper, right?
It's a straight. So either we can machine that, or we can just drill that one straight.
Yeah.
It looks like it has a teeny bit of taper.
It does have a taper, right? Yeah.
Teeny taper, but not a lot. Like
that would be hard to.
This would be so easy to, and you could space up for roll center if you wanted to. We do more than just sell car parts at F. Whether we're helping you wrench in your car over the weekend with our DIY content, whether we're putting really cool builds out on the road and out on the racetrack, or traveling around the country competing in professional motorsport, subscribe here to learn more.
With some modern Mercedes parts, the 190's suspension update began to fall into place. The W204 coilovers and knuckles fit perfectly with the new steering rack, leaving the lower ball joint as the missing variable.
So Nate isn't here right now, but now that we have our Schaeffler wheel bearings here, we're just going to test fit to make sure everything's going to work properly. Since we're kind of getting close to the end of some of our deadlines, we want to get everything squared away as early as possible. So we're going to take our nice, beautiful wheel bearing and hub assembly. We're going to stick it in our C63 hub. We're going to be relatively complete with our C63 front hub conversion, which means we can then run our C63 calipers, our C63 discs, and most importantly, some really nice suspension that's normally going to be targeted towards the W204 chassis, but in this case, we're going to be able to run it on our 190E here. So slap this guy in, and we'll be good to go. And then I'll throw a couple more bolts in, grab some tools, and torque it down. Danny just figured out we found the right tie rods. We've been searching for the right tie rods for a while. We probably tried out 6 or 7 different sets of tie rods, but we ended up with an E90 M3 tie rod. It fits the E46 rack with this thread up front, but it's also a significant length longer, and it has the same thread as the Mercedes tie rod end. So we actually have E46 rack, we have E90 tie rod, and then we have Mercedes tie rod end. So it's a very unique suspension on this car, but it all works together, as you can see. We have a nice quick steering ratio, which is going to be awesome when we're driving this car on track. In addition to that, we don't have ball joints in here, but we just sort of have bolts holding things together, just really mocking everything up, making sure everything's going to fit right.
The next part to make fit was a DO88 intercooler from a Volvo C30.
So here we go, we got the intercooler sitting here. You can see we're actually lifting it up underneath the hood to make sure we get it as high as possible. You can see this is really that channel, this is that top channel. So we'll have a piece of plastic or carbon that's going to basically deflect the air. So we have a channel of air going through the intercooler and a channel of air going through the radiator.
Keeping the coolant and charge air cold is paramount for optimal performance on track. If this DTM Tribute was to run as hard and as long as the race cars from the golden era, ensuring the intercooler and radiator each had their own airflow was key.
We built this quick little frame here. Obviously we cut the old stuff out. We wanted to make sure we had a divorced intercooler and radiator. Now on top of that, you can see that we've actually taken this turbo. We're not going to hold it on with tie wraps, but what we've done is we've actually orientated it 180 degrees from its original orientation. So we're making a custom plate that's going to do the adaptation, because this is a twin scroll and there's two inlets in the exhaust side. But what that allows us to do is basically we're going to connect here to here directly, and then off of the intercooler straight to the intake of the car. Now, that being a smaller volume of air, that's going to make, when the turbo spools, the engine's going to feel it right away. That's going to really impact throttle response and give us a nice crisp throttle response, which in the end, that's what we're going for with this engine. We're not worried about making 600 horsepower. We want 400 horsepower or 350 horsepower, but we want it to be just like that Cosworth naturally aspirated engine would be, where when you tip in the throttle, you get the power when you need it. Now, the other thing we've been working on is the downpipe. So we have a downpipe that we've sliced up here, and basically we've had to section out a little bit of the chassis to make sure we have clearance for that downpipe to move down here. Obviously, this is going to be one of the hottest sections of the engine, this whole exhaust system. So we really want to make sure we have clearance around the steering, stuff like that. We're going to do some heat shielding in the original factory heat shield here to make sure we keep the heat out of the driver's compartment of the car and make it going underneath the car where we want it to be. To make up for this little section that we've cut out here, we're actually going to do the old Kazi trick with the Ford Escort RS and the Ford Escort Cosworth, and we're going to basically tie an X. So we're going to have an X that ties into our cage that goes to either strut top, just like that. And that's going to give us super rigid strut tops, make sure these things aren't flexing around, even though we took away a little bit of structure there. The last little bit is we are working with some people to make the strut tower tops. The goal is I'm hoping to get the tower to sit on top of this rather than underneath it. That's going to give us a little bit extra length for the spring. Remember, the Evo 2s run really low in the front. The fender cuts actually come right up to this line here. So they run really low in the front, and we want to make sure we're not sitting on the bump stops the whole time. So we need to make sure we have a little extra movement for the suspension, so we're not right up at the end of the coilover all the time. Just a few things going on here. Just a couple. So because it's going straight from the fab shop to the paint shop, we really need to make sure some of the interior bits are figured out. So we have our shifter right here. That's going to be mounted right up on the X. X marks the spot. So we're going to have to build stands that basically pedestal this thing up in the air a little bit. And then what's going to be really cool, we're going to have a fully exposed shift linkage. So the shift linkage will come straight forward to the transmission right here. But the challenging part of this is we need to sort of build an area here where the shift linkage can pass through the floor, but that we can seal off with a rubber boot. So we're going to build a little structure there out of sheet metal that allows it to come straight through, and then we'll have a little rubber boot on there to seal it off so no exhaust gases or heat or anything comes into the cabin when the car is being driven. This is scientific measuring. Approximately 185. It's an 89, so that looks like 185. So I would almost say real quick, why don't we just drop this thing, put it on the bench next to that thing, see what it looks like. Because this is like a what is it? 309,
That would be a
314, 327.
Yep.
It's a three long gear ratio slow. You know how we tell gear ratio? So that's what we do. This is the gear ratio explained. You see the red? Now, do you see this mark right here? So now I'm going to spin this around and we're going to watch that mark. So, ready? Uno, dos, tres, and maybe 25% more rotation. So, yeah,
There you go.
3.25 or whatever you said it was, 3.27. The higher the ratio, closer to the gears, which means every time you shift, the RPM doesn't drop as far. So typically in racing cars or track cars, we want that to be relatively close because you really are using higher RPM and you want your rev range to stay close. You're not really looking for highway fuel economy. Whereas this car was built, it was actually looking for highway fuel economy, low RPM on the highway. So that's why it has a very low ratio diff. 1,611 millimeters. Go down to the bottom. 1,611 millimeters. We should note that before we take this one out, and then obviously we can test out that one and whatever. It looks like the flange size might be different, so that might be a Driveshaft shop thing. But yeah, let's get this out of here.
Being able to run the W204 gearbox was a critical win for the team, but has required some custom parts. Along with the new clutch assembly, a custom-made driveshaft is a necessity.
So they're pretty close, but they're not exact. So the back cover, where the mounts are, we have to swap over, but this back cover doesn't look like it's going to swap directly onto this diff. And then we have to get these ears off, these ears, and make sure that the splines are the same inside. But from general stuff, width, mounting points, stuff like that, they're pretty much the same. So we're going to see what we can do.
To get the snappy response of the early 90s DTM machines, the 190E was going to need a shorter axle ratio. After some intense searching, the team settled on a 3.46 ratio differential from a W203 C240. Paired with an OS Geekin limited slip differential, it's just what the turbocharged Mercedes needed.
It's carbon paper. Paper fiber drive shaft.
Science, right?
Yeah, so what we did is we actually took an old shipping container because it's about the OD of the drive shaft that we know we're gonna have to put in this thing. And we threw it up there and we mocked it out so we make sure we have clearance everywhere. Here we need to cut out the center bearing support here, but aside from that, this drive shaft should function 100%.
With the help of some cardboard tubing, the team figured out all of their measurements and cleared the tunnel in preparation.
I am loosening up the bolts for the subframe. Unfortunately, these back ones I can't get the impact on, so you gotta go old school on them. It's hanging on for dear life. Keep going. Keep going. Yep, you're clear. Up. We're gonna do some reinforcing on it. We're gonna get rid of this. Throw this in the trash. And make sure it's all good to have 400 horsepower going through it and slide sideways around Lime Rock, the Circuit Legends.
Building a new wiring harness for the custom engine management was the next step in the process. The team brought in an old friend and engineer from FCP Euro's IMSA team, who flew in from Canada to lend his expertise to the complicated wiring harness.
My name is Karim Antaki. I'm from Canada. I've worked as a race engineer for the last almost 20 years. We're here building this awesome car here at FCP Euro. Hopefully it'll be very fast and very furious. Theoretically, to have a vision, you have to see where everything and all the electrical parts are located, so you have an idea of actually how the wiring is going to pass through bulkheads, and to make sure everything is going to have the adequate wire size and the adequate power to make everything run properly. So it's the question at the start to have the vision. Once you have the vision, everything else becomes a mechanism. So at the end of the day, I think we're at the start of a beautiful project. I just need to figure out which box goes where first. For this engine, we're using a Motec M141, which is basically typed for high pressure injections and high pressure injectors that are built specifically for this engine. The piezo injectors will actually be controlled with a higher voltage than the regular injectors, so therefore this means that it cannot be controlled with the regular setup. It's got to have something very specific to it, which Motec has actually made a very good controller for that specific injector. Just like the BMW N54 engine, it's got the same type of injectors for this one. Hey bud, you have an N54 yet? You have a 6-pack of coils and a 6-pack of injectors?
That's the best thing I've ever heard.
Three, two, one. We can do a rear bulkhead connection. If you want to do an embossed plate that comes out a little bit, that might actually be a little bit nicer than to have the guitar string going in the back. If the plate comes out 2 inches here, it could actually looks like it's actually doing something cool.
Yeah.
Which it doesn't need to do much.
As long as we clear
nice
the
3D
wiper,
plate.
I think it's the only thing we have to make sure of. Because the wiper, this is a bolt for the wiper,
Yeah.
and then there's one there, and I believe there might be one on the
What
back
I
of
want
the
to do,
plate.
it's going to look nicer if it comes out at an angle like this than if it's actually strung out in the middle, because there's absolutely no room in there.
Yep, I get you. Yeah, I can have something.
clusterfuck
I can have
in there.
something fabbed up like that.
Sure. I remember just like BMW when they put plastic, usually they're trying to hide something.
Yeah.
That's exactly what they're doing. So yeah, we can do this. We can have a nice plug here with a bit of strain relief there, even a little bit further if we can. So this is going to be plugged in with a round connector.
Yep.
You realize there's a potential to have 96 connectors in there, so I'm going to have to count exactly how many wires and get the right plug.
Okay.
So we can't be like, let's put more wires.
Yeah. Good. All right.
And cut.
With a lot of work left to do for Karim on the engine harness, the team moved their focus onto thinning down the chassis harness. Retaining functioning lights is about all that's essential. Everything else will be cut out for weight savings.
If I know a pinout of the wires coming through here, that when I connect to it, trunk's done. So that's my goal right now. So we're just gonna do some quick testing. We got a jump pack in here, some jumper cables, and we're gonna see some lights light up. Blinker on the right side. Right. We got black and white. That's turn signal on the left side, looks like. The thing I love about building cars, or cars in general, is like when you really dig down, they're so very simple. They're just stacking and stacking of systems on top of each other that it becomes complicated. But when you really get down to each individual thing, it's actually very simple. So the taillight harness is sorted. I'm just gonna fold it over on itself, tape it again. That means all the wiring in the trunk is done with the exception of fuel pump wiring.
We're going to look through every single system that we have, make sure we have the pinout, make sure we have the logic behind how the functioning of each individual item, so we can make sense of it, make sure there's nothing we're forgetting, because nothing sucks more than making a harness and forgetting stuff. So at the end of the day, it is what it is. We need to go through the whole hash list and make sure everything works fine. I'll get back to work and I'll let you know what we've done tomorrow morning. How does that sound?
See you then.
Cool. I stayed until 10 working on this beautiful car, and then went to sleep for a couple of hours, mulching over the project in my head, trying to second guess myself. In all progression since I arrived, we identify which plugs actually did what on the engine, because we had a donor engine with everything unplugged. We identify the bulkhead connectors, which wire have which function. We identify how we're going to plug this connector to the firewall, and then from the firewall to the ECU, the pinout's been done. We've made the logic system for the electronics to control the whole power distribution for the car. We've allocated the space in which we're going to put it in. We know where the other modules are going to be, so next step is going to have fab the car so that we can actually install the boxes and modules into the system. And at that point, we can fire away the chassis loom at that point and make everything work perfectly and have the outputs ready for when we receive the engine loom, so we can plug everything in and test the functions when we get it. So it's progressing faster in my head than actually on the car itself, but once the parts start coming in, it's going to be a nice cascade of installation. So it's pretty cool what we've done so far. It's a good start to a project that has a lot of question marks on it, so it's pretty good. So I'm not supposed to say this, nobody asked me to do it, but I'm going to say it anyway. Big shout out to the FCP guys. The place is kick-ass. It's amazing coming from the outside and the outside. I've been looking at the shop through the internet and through what the content guys have been doing. It's pretty amazing. I'm coming in here to work on a project, and I'm impressed by the whole organization and the company. So good luck, guys. Keep going in that direction.
All right, so this is like the pinnacle of the dry fit right now. So we have basically everything bolted together, sort of, kind of, maybe how it's going to be, but we're getting ready to head off to the fab shop for the cage to be done. From there, we're going to do the exhaust system, a bunch of little odds and ends that are going to finish this thing up. But pretty much right now we have the radiator, we have the intercooler, we have the headlights, kind of all mapped out in the front. We have the engine located where it's going to be. We have shifter hooked up. We have the wiper back installed. We have suspension on it that's actually functional. We have the dash installed. We have temporary seat mounts, pedals installed, fuel cells sitting in the back. Basically, everything's sort of mapped out where it's going to be so that we can hand it off to the fabrication shop. They can build the cage, and then it's going to go from there to the paint shop and get all shiny and get some new bodywork put on it. All right, let's roll. Here, we got to actually roll that out of the way. All right.
The 190E is off to the body shop for roll cage fabrication and paint, just a handful of weeks away from deadline. Is there enough time to have the custom fabbed roll cage installed? And will the Evo 2 body panels arrive in time for paint? Find out on the next episode of the Golden Era Project.
If you need to catch up on the Golden Era, click up here. And if you want to see some of our other builds, check them out down here.